Hello everyone, this is Christy. Welcome back to another Spanish lesson with Gringa Spanish. So today we are going to be talking about the subjunctive again, and we're going to be talking about irregular verbs in the subjunctive. So this is a little more advanced. That being said, the subjunctive is very important for learning Spanish. So if you're a beginner, you can still watch this video and start getting these rules in your mind, but don't be scared if you're very confused the first time that you hear about this. It really is a lot. I'm going to try to break it down as easily as possible. Also, I have noticed that you guys do not like my grammar videos, but I just want to tell you how important grammar is to learning Spanish. That whatever your journey is your journey. But I want to tell you that learning grammar will help speed up your journey. Because if you don't learn the rules, if you don't take a little bit of time to at least learn what the rules are, you're basically forcing yourself to figure them out by yourself. So if you just take some time to go over basic grammar rules, you'll notice things and be like, oh, yeah, I know that. That's why she said it this way, because of this grammar rule. So many times, all the time. And things like the subjunctive are so common in Spanish. So I know that it can be a little intimidating, but I think it'll help you in the long run if you take some time to go over the rules. That being said, your journey is your journey. I think you'll end up here at some point, even if you don't want to take time at the beginning to learn the rules, but don't worry about it. So today we're going to be talking about the subjunctive and irregular verbs. This is going to take a little bit of time to go over all the different rules, so there won't be examples per se today, but I'll do a separate video with just subjunctive practice and subjunctive examples so that you guys can keep getting them in your head. So just a little review from last time. We have the summary. The subjunctive is used to express doubt or desire. You can look for common trigger expressions that occur before the subjunctive happens. The subjunctive is a mood in Spanish, as opposed to a tense. So there is past subjunctive, present subjunctive. We're just talking about present subjunctive because that's going to cover 99%. There's also a future subjunctive, which is not really used in modern Spanish. And to be honest with you, the past subjunctive is not used very often either. So we're just talking about the present subjunctive. Okay, so the subjunctive is also the identical form used in negative commands. If you watch the commands video, the command is a mood as well. It's called the imperative. And usted commands, which is formal commands. That's when you're telling somebody to do something. So that's also something very useful to learn how to do. You say, do this, do that. That's called a command or the imperative. Nosotros commands also use the subjunctive form of the verb. So basically, to remember your rules, to conjugate a verb in the subjunctive present tense, AR verbs are going to use your ER endings, and ER-IR verbs are going to use your AR endings. Easy, right? So, and the last thing is the yo conjugation is also going to be the same as the el conjugation always. So your first person and your third person are both going to use the ending of the third person. Now I want to repeat, if you watched the last video, you already know this. You might ask, okay, if yo becomes the same as el in the subjunctive, how do I know which one somebody means? And I would say you will know by context 99% of the time. If you jump into the middle of something and you hear it, you might not be sure immediately, but usually it's very clear from context which one of these the speaker means. Alright, so let's go into our rules. Okay, so there's different kind of stem changes that happen in the indicative tense, right? So indicative is the normal conjugation that you learn in Spanish 101. Indicative tense or the indicative mood just means you're telling somebody something. I go to the store. I need to go to the store. I go to drink coffee on Wednesdays. That's the indicative mood. The imperative mood is giving commands. You go get coffee for me. You go to the store for me. That's a command. That's the imperative. And the last mood in Spanish is the subjunctive. The subjunctive doesn't exist in English. It's used to give doubts and desires. If you're confused about that, don't worry. I think you'll help understand that a little more if you watch the previous video, and hopefully in the upcoming examples video, you'll see more examples. That being said, you remember your stem changes from the indicative. A lot of verbs have a stem change. The stem is the beginning part before the ending that's A-R-E-R-I-R. The stem can change from E to IE in many verbs. So I have some commons one right here. Cerrar, if you remember, yo cierro. Comenzar, yo comienzo. Empezar, yo empiezo. Okay, so that's a stem change that you know about. So 99% of verbs with this stem change will keep the stem change in the subjunctive. So down here we have perder, so let's take a look at that. So this is the indicative present tense. Yo pierdo. You can see that the subjunctive also keeps the IE change. Pierda. Tú pierdes. Tú pierdas. Él pierde. Él pierda. Now this is the part that you need to pay attention to. Usually in the nosotros, vosotros form, that stem change does not happen. So these are irregular in this form and in the ellos form, but the nosotros, vosotros form, the stem does not change the majority of the time. I'll go ahead and say all the time. I can't think of any that follow this rule that the nosotros and vosotros changes. So what you need to remember is that whatever it is in the indicative form for the yo, the tú, the nosotros, the vosotros, it will keep the same stem into the subjunctive. So nosotros perdemos, nosotros perdamos. Vosotros perdéis, vosotros perdáis. Okay? So whatever the stem is over here, the stem is going to be the same in the subjunctive. Now the only exception to this rule that I could find is sentirse or sentir. Sentir means to feel. So that's why I put 99% here. If there's others that follow this rule, I could not find them. But for sentir, nosotros and vosotros, instead of the E changing to an IE, the E just changes to an I instead of only an E. So next I'm going to show you for sentir. Okay, so here we have sentir, so what happens? So in the indicative you have yo me siento. So subjunctive, it is what you would expect. Yo me sienta. Now, tú te sientes, tú te sientas. When we come down to the nosotros, vosotros, that's where things get interesting. So if you'll see, you would expect from the rule that I told you that whatever the stem is here, the subjunctive would keep the same here. Sentir is the only E to IE verb that I found that this is not the case. So I've seen it written two ways. I've seen it written with the IE. So one way to remember this would be that in the subjunctive form of sentir, all of the forms become an IE. But I've also seen it with just an I, this one right here. So nos sentimos becomes nos sientamos or nos sintamos. Vos sentís becomes vos sientáis or vos sintáis. I have seen both of these. So honestly, I think the one with just an I sounds better, but I've seen both of them. So choose whichever one you want. So just as a summary, because I know that's confusing. You're like, what? What's happening? Don't worry. Everybody, stop panicking. I'm just kidding. Everybody panic. Okay. So just to recap what we just said, 99% of the time, the subjunctive verbs with E to IE will keep the same change as the indicative form. So if the yo form has this stem, the subjunctive is going to have the same stem but switch the ending. If the nosotros has a different stem, that's fine. Keep that stem, change the ending. So remember, keep that stem, change the ending. Keep that stem, change the ending. The only exception to that rule is sentirse. That's the only one that I could find. And this is for E to IE verbs. The next type of stem change is E to I stem change. So we have some examples here. We have corregir. This becomes yo corrijo. Decir. This becomes yo digo. Medir becomes mido. I put question marks here because conjugation.org was actually telling me that this is medo. But every other... I check a lot of this before I tell you guys just in case I have mistakes that I don't realize. I trust conjugation.org a lot, but this one was, I think it was wrong because everything else was telling me this does become yo mido with an I. Pedir, yo pido. Repetir, yo repito. Seguir, yo sigo. So you see all of these, the E becomes an I. So, all conjugations that have the E to I stem change, even when the nosotros and the vosotros do not in the indicative form. I read that wrong, I apologize. All conjugations have the E to I change, even when the nosotros and vosotros do not in the indicative form. I repeat, because I messed up the first time. All of the conjugations will have the E to the I change, even when the nosotros and vosotros do not in the indicative form. So remember for the last one, I said whatever the stem, keep the stem, change the end. Keep the stem, change the end. It's the opposite here. For E to I stem changes, all of them are going to have the stem change, even if nosotros and vosotros don't. Change all of the stems. Change all of the stems for this one. The second rule is, when additional stem changes happen in the yo indicative form, use the yo stem. You're going to see this come back later for other irregular verbs. So let's look at corregir. So corregir becomes yo corrijo. The E does change to an I, but there's another change. The G changes to a J. The G also changes to a J. So this one, the second rule, is going to also apply. You are going to keep the yo stem for all of them in addition to the I changing, in addition to the E changing to an I for all of the indicative forms except nosotros and vosotros. But remember, it's also going to change to an I for all of them in the subjunctive, even if it doesn't include all of them in the indicative. Okay, so let's do corregir. Yo corrijo. Tú corriges. Él corrige. Nosotros corregimos. Vosotros corregís. Ellos corrigen. The subjunctive, all of them are going to keep the yo stem. Boom. That's going to be all of them. And then change the ending from an ER ending, an IR ending, to an AR ending. Yo corrija. Tú corrijas. Él corrija. Nosotros corrijamos. Vosotros corrijáis. Ellos corrijan. So this would be the same for any other E to I stem change verb, except in this case the second rule also applies, that we're going to keep the J here. Okay? Next up, we have O to UE stem changes. This includes poder. Remember, poder means to be able to. Poder becomes yo puedo. Dormir, that means to sleep. Yo duermo. Contar, that means to tell somebody something, becomes yo cuento. Volar means to fly. Yo vuelo. Volver means to return. Yo vuelvo. Morir means to die. Yo me muero. It's a reflexive verb, I think. Encontrar means to find. Yo encuentro. Mostrar means to demonstrate something. Yo muestro. So these are irregular in the indicative tense, where the O becomes a UE. So what happens to these in the subjunctive tense? In the subjunctive tense, the verb will be the same as the indicative conjugation, but change the ending as the same for any other subjunctive rule. So basically, again, similar to the first rule, whatever the stem is in the indicative form, keep that same stem in the subjunctive form, but change the ending, as you would for any subjunctive. So remember, again, we're back to the first rule. Keep the stem, change the end. Keep the stem, change the end. Whatever it is in the indicative conjugation, keep the stem, change the end for the subjunctive. So here we see nosotros, vosotros have a different stem. That's okay. What are nosotros and vosotros in the subjunctive? The same thing. Keep the stem, change the end. Some verbs switch O to U for nosotros and vosotros. The only ones I saw that do this are dormir and morir, but I didn't search too much for this one. So if you know any other ones where the nosotros and vosotros switch the O to a U, let me know. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you. If you're going to guess, do the first rule. Keep the stem, change the end. But know that you may come across exceptions where the verbs will switch the O to the U for the nosotros and vosotros forms. Alright, let's look at poder as an example. The indicative form, yo puedo. So what's the subjunctive form going to be? Yo pueda. Keep the stem, change the end. Tú puedes. Tú puedas. Él puede. Él pueda. Nosotros podemos. Nosotros podamos. Vosotros podéis. Vosotros podáis. Ellos pueden. Ellos puedan. Alright, and here we're going to talk about dormir. I'm going to show you dormir so you can see this exception to the O to the UE rules. The indicative is yo duermo. The subjunctive, yo duerma. So this one is the same. Yo, tú, él, all the same. The interesting thing happens in the in the vosotros, nosotros. So tú duermes, tú duermas. Él duerme, él duerma. Nosotros dormimos, nosotros durmamos. Vosotros dormís, vosotros durmáis. So what happened here? In the indicative form, the nosotros and the vosotros do not have the stem change. But instead of being like most verbs, where you keep the stem, change the end, they actually follow a different rule because it didn't become a UE, it just became a U. So it became durmamos. Vosotros durmáis. Okay, so this is one of those exceptions to the rules. You can remember this one in particular. But if you have to guess, follow the rules. There is another very common irregularity in the subjunctive where if the verb has a very irregular yo form, many verbs that have an irregular yo indicative form will use that stem for all of the subjunctive conjugations. So I have a list of some of the common ones here. And so I put the yo conjugation here. And know that for the subjunctive tense, you are going to forget about that O, and you are going to put the subjunctive ending. So for caber, it would be all the AR endings. For caer, it would be all the AR endings. For conocer, it would be all the AR endings. Construir, all the AR endings, and so on and so forth. For the AR endings, it would be the ER endings. Okay, so let's just go over the examples so you can get them in your ear and your brain. Caber becomes yo quepo. So the subjunctive would be yo quepa, tú quepas, and so on. Caer, yo me caigo. This is a reflexive verb a lot of the time. Yo caigo. So subjunctive would be yo caiga, tú caigas, and so on. Conocer becomes yo conozco. So the subjunctive would be yo conozca, tú conozcas, and so on. Construir becomes construyo. So the subjunctive would be yo construya, tú construyas, and so on. Decir becomes yo digo. So the subjunctive would be yo diga, tú digas. This one is very useful because remember, you use the subjunctive when you're giving commands. So, or negative commands or formal commands. So if I'm saying don't say anything, I say no digas nada. This is why. Now you know why. So decir becomes yo digo. This is one of the ones that keep the yo form, that keep the yo stem for all of the subjunctive conjugations. So subjunctive becomes yo diga, tú digas, él diga, and so on. Elegir, yo elijo. Hacer, yo hago. This is another really, really common one. So remember, for the subjunctive, it's going to be yo haga, tú hagas, él haga, and so on. Oír becomes yo oigo. Parecer becomes parezco. Poner becomes pongo. So this is another pretty common one. So if you're saying don't put that over there, you use the subjunctive form. So no pongas, tú no pongas eso ahí. Don't put that there. You use the subjunctive form. Or if you're saying tell him not to put that there, you'd have to use the subjunctive form. You say di a él que no lo ponga. See, that's the el form of poner in the subjunctive, ahí. So I know this grammar is a little overwhelming at first, but it is important. And you will use it a lot when you learn it. So salir becomes salgo. Use that stem for all the subjunctives. Tener, this is another really important one, becomes tengo. So no tenga, yo tenga, tú tengas, él tenga. Traer, traigo. So subjunctive, use all your endings. Forget about the O. Valer, valgo. Venir means to come, vengo. And lastly, ver, this is also pretty common, that means to see, becomes veo. So the subjunctive is going to be yo vea, tú veas, and so on. So guys, I just want to point out to you again the real big ones from here. Decir, this one you're going to see all the time. Hacer, this one you're going to see all the time. Tener, you're going to see this very often. And ver you see pretty often, poner you see pretty often, salir you see pretty often. But the big ones I would say decir, hacer, tener. We're almost done, guys. So the last thing that I want to tell you is other irregular subjunctive verbs. Just like for the indicative form, remember how I said there are some irregular verbs that follow no rules, they just are what they are. But the really, really good thing about these ones is they tend to be the real common ones that you will see over and over and over again. And they also tend to be the ones that if you were to try to use the regular rules, they would sound really weird. So if you were ever in that situation where you're like, how do I say this? And your brain automatically follows the rules, an alarm is going to go off and say that doesn't sound right. So you can learn this, don't worry. If you're overwhelmed right now, I think everybody is the first time that they learn this. Just come back to this in a week, listen to the video again, you'll remember some things already. Keep going. Every time you listen to it, it'll make more and more sense. So, in a few cases, the stem ending changes in the subjunctive form. For example, buscar becomes busque. Tú busques, él busque, busquemos. Pagar becomes pague. Yo pague, tú pagues, él pague, nosotros paguemos, and so on. Lanzar becomes lance. So notice here the ending of the stem changes. C became a QU, G became a GU, and here Z is becoming a C. So lanzar becomes lance, tú lances, él lance, and so on. And now these are the ones that are the real common ones that just, they don't follow any rules. They are what they are, but they're going to be super easy to remember because you will see them all the time. So ir becomes vaya. It's kind of similar to the yo form, which is yo voy, but it has an A in the middle. So yo vaya, tú vayas, él vaya, and so on. Saber becomes sepa. This one's pretty common. Yo sepa, tú sepas. So if you see I'm telling you, you've probably, if you're trying to learn Spanish, you've probably seen these before and just not known what the heck they were. So now you know. Saber in the subjunctive becomes sepa. What the hell was that word? It was saber, but in the subjunctive. Ser becomes sea. Tú seas, él sea, nosotros seamos. Haber becomes haya. Yo haya, tú hayas. Dar again means to give. Yo de, tú des, él de, nosotros demos. So if you say don't give it to him, no le des. Or don't give it to her, no le des. Estar. This one's pretty easy. It's considered irregular again because of the accent. Yo esté, tú estés, él esté. Okay guys, so that's it for today. We don't have time to go over examples, So I will make a separate video going over subjunctive examples, which will hopefully help you to continue to understand or create a feel for when it is used, and see for yourself the subjunctive in action. But we don't really have time for that today on top of all of the rules that you just learned. So if you feel like you just learned a whole lot and your head is spinning, don't worry. You've seen some of these. It's really, a lot of these verbs are real common. So it's really important for you to at least get those irregular rules in your head, and they're simmering in your head. And next time you come back to it, it'll make more sense. Whether that's with me, whether that's somewhere else, the more times you come back to these rules, the less your head will be spinning each time. And these rules are very, very important for speaking Spanish well. To the point where I would say someone might have a hard time understanding you if you are supposed to use the subjunctive and you don't. It could be confusing. So it is important is what I'm saying. So if you got to this far in the lesson, give yourself a pat on the back. I know this was really long, and I'll come back next time with some more examples. Lastly, please like and subscribe if this is helping you. I would really appreciate the feedback to let me know that this is helpful content for those of you learning Spanish. Have a good one. I'll see you guys next time.